New Jersey is one of many states facing a large budget shortfall. Despite that, Governor Chris Christie plans to let a tax that added a surcharge on those that make $400,000 or more expire. There are 7 other states with a similar millionaire's tax in place. But do they work? Does taxing the wealthy more actually help states raise money? Joining us now is Ron Christie, founder and CEO of Christie's Strategies, and David Callahan, director and senior fellow at the Demos International Program. First of all, Ron, I assume you are not related to Governor Christie.
No, not even a distant relative.
Okay. Just want to make sure we got that on the table. So, Ron, what's your view? Do these millionaires' taxes actually work?
Good morning, Mark. No, they don't work. We only have to look at the state of Maryland to determine that this is a bad fiscal policy. In the state of Maryland in 2008, they imposed a so-called millionaire's tax, and they thought that they were going to raise $106 million in additional revenue. Well, what happens? In 2009, they realized that they lost $100 million. Why? Because there were 3,000 millionaire families that were filing in 2008, and then, of course, in 2009, there were 2,000. So people left the state, and they didn't realize the actual income. It doesn't work.
Gee, that's kind of a drastic move to leave the state. David Callahan, you see it otherwise?
People don't move out of a state because the taxes are higher on the wealthy. I mean, just look at New York City. Taxes here have long been higher than almost any place else in the country on wealthy people, and there's a lot of wealthy people in New York City. A few extra percentage points on your tax bill is not why you move out of a state.
But when does a few become too many? I mean, at this point, I mean, this is the third. We ran the numbers ourselves the other day, folks. It looks like you could get up to 60% for taxes for people in the top bracket when you add in federal, state, sales, all that. And that doesn't count capital gains or dividends next year. A couple of percent on top of that. I mean, at some point, you're talking real money.
Well, yeah, and I think the historic record is pretty clear that that doesn't depress growth. Look what Bill Clinton did. He raised taxes on upper-income Americans quite significantly, and we entered one of the longest periods of economic growth this country has seen, and the rich got richer. The top income tax bracket during the post-war boom years reached 90% for the upper-income people. That didn't stop a long period of economic growth. So I just don't see higher tax rates being something that depresses economic growth.
Ron, you think we could tax people at 90%?
No, we can't, Aaron. And here's the thing. What we've learned is, why should we penalize the job creators and the entrepreneurs in this country that have actually stimulated the economy? Why don't we say, if we want to have increased goods and services, Americans have to pay for them. We need to balance the budget. But as my indication and my example that I used earlier proves, the state of Maryland, they lost revenue, they lost tax filers, it didn't increase the amount of revenue heading into the state. We need to find a better way to address our goods and services, but increasing taxes on those who are creating the jobs is not the solution to do it.
But Ron, there were 7 other states, and you're only citing 1, which makes me think that the other 6, if we look at them, would tell a different story.
Well, we could look at the aggregate, Mark. We could look at Hawaii. Hawaii claims that they have a so-called millionaire's tax, but you're hitting people who are making as little as $400,000 a year. We can go through the other states. My point still remains the same. We should not be penalizing wealth creators and job creators.
In the other states with the millionaire tax?
We can look at those states. I can't answer that off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm using a specific example of one where it has proven that it has depressed the economics in the state of Maryland.
David, there was a logical flaw in something you said a little earlier. There's a difference between a federal tax burden and whether you can avoid it, and a state tax. You can move out of the state, but unless you're willing to leave the country, you're not going to be able to escape a federal tax burden.
Well, that's exactly right. And the taxes for the rich will be going up at the federal level. Barack Obama is increasing that upper income tax bracket, and also wants to increase taxes on hedge funds and private equity people. I think that we live in a knowledge economy. The wealthy have done the best in this economy. If you want that economy to continue growing, you need to make investments in education, infrastructure, scientific research. Come back to that example in New Jersey. Christie is going to put $1 billion back into the pockets of people making over $400,000 a year while cutting education, both K through 12 and public universities, by $1.1 billion. That does not make sense. It does not make sense to take money out of education and give it to wealthy people. All of New Jersey will do better if we invest more in education, but the wealthy in particular that need that highly educated workforce.
Isn't it fair, though, then you have the conversation, you know, even when you look at New York, right, where spending on schools has gone up while enrollment has actually dropped and test scores haven't gone up. It's not a matter just of more money, it's a matter of how that money's spent, right?
Well, international comparisons show clearly that countries that invest more in education get more economic growth. The McKinsey report shows a direct correlation between investments in education and economic growth. So it's clear that more money makes a difference.